Good afternoon to you and welcome to the live proceedings of the National Assembly on this Thursday. The date is June 22nd, the year is 2023. A broadcast brought to you courtesy of the collaboration between the Kenya Broadcasting Corporation and the Parliamentary Broadcasting Unit. This is the second sitting of the National Assembly today, being that the House last night decided to have a sitting today, contrary to what they usually have. Normally, the National Assembly sits on Wednesday in the morning and in the afternoon, but owing to the nature of business, the House had to sit yet again on Thursday morning. Allow me to take you through the highlights in the order of business today, and giving you some of the highlights on what our members of the National Assembly will be considering this afternoon. The Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 16 of the year 2023, a bill by the leader of the majority party, is a motion that members of the National Assembly will be resuming debate on. This particular bill, an amendment bill on public finance management, was deliberated on and ventilated on by members of the National Assembly this morning. And we expect that the National Assembly, so to speak, also resumes debate on this particular bill this afternoon. The Chairperson Departmental Committee on Matters Justice and Legal Affairs will be moving a special motion. This particular motion is on the consideration of the nominee for the appointment as the Principal Secretary, State Department of Correlation Services. That taking into account the consideration of the findings of the Departmental Committee on Justice and Legal Affairs in its report on the vetting of a nominee for the appointment. And this particular nominee has been nominated as a Principal Secretary, State Department for Correlation Services. And the report of the committee was tabled on the House on Wednesday, June 21st, 2023, and also pursuant to the provisions of Article 155, subsection 3B of the Constitution and Section 8, subsection 1 of the Public Appointments Parliamentary Approval Act of 2011 appoints and approves the appointment of Ms. Salome Wairimu Muhia Biako as the Principal Secretary, State Department for Correlation Services. The order is full of motions this afternoon. Another motion that the House will be considering this afternoon is the ratification of the amended Nairobi Convention and the Protocol for the Protection of Marine and the Coastal Environment for the Western Indian Ocean and from the land-based sources and activities. This is a motion that will be moved by the Chairperson Departmental Committee on Matters Environment, Forestry and Mining, that the House adopts the report of the Departmental Committee on Matters Environment, Forestry and Mining on its consideration of the ratification of the amended Nairobi Convention and the Protocol for the Protection of the Marine and Coastal Environment of the Western Indian Ocean from the land-based sources and activities. The report of the committee was laid on the table of the House on the 4th of May and pursuant to the provisions of Section 8, subsection 4 of the Treaty Making and Ratification Act of 2012 approves the ratification of the amended Nairobi Convention and the Protocol for the Protection of Marine and the Coastal Environment of the Western Indian Ocean from land-based sources and activity. This is equally a motion that members of the National Assembly will be resuming debate on. The Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, is presiding over the business of the National Assembly this afternoon, just about to commence in a few minutes. My name is Gladys Mungai. Allow me to hand you over for this particular live broadcast brought to you courtesy of PBU and KBC. Enjoy your viewing.
Ewe Mwenyezi Mungu ambaye kwa hekima na wema wako umetua nyadhifa za viongozi na mabunge kwa ustawi wa jamii na utawala wa haki wa wanadamu. Tukusihi utazame kwa neema nyingi sisi watumishi wako ambao umeridhika kutuita ili tutekeleze shughuli muhimu za jamhuri yetu. Tukuomba uteremshie baraka zako sisi tuliokutanika hapa na utujalie tuyatende na kufikiria mambo yote yatakayofikishwa mbele yetu kwa njia ya haki na uaminifu, ili utukufu na sifa zako siendelezwe, na ili kustawisha amani, ufanisi na heri ya nchi yetu, na wale ambao haja zao umezikabidhi mikononi mwetu. Amen. Sergeant, ring the division bell. We are way short of quorum.
The energy is finished.
We overstretched it.
The Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Moses Wetangula, currently presiding over the business of the National Assembly this afternoon, has directed the Sergeant-at-Arms to ring the quorum bell, and this is to give some leeway to members of the National Assembly within the presence of Parliament who are yet to make their way into the chambers this afternoon, to allow the House to raise the requisite number to commence business this afternoon. According to the standing orders of the House must at least have 50 members for it to commence business. This particular directive by the Speaker is also pursuant to Standing Orders number 34 of the National Assembly. Meanwhile, as the whip ensures that members of the National Assembly make their way into the chambers this afternoon, allow me to take you through some of the businesses that will be ventilated on and debated by members of the National Assembly this afternoon. The ratification of the Kigali Amendments on the Montreal Protocol on the substances that deplete the ozone layer is a motion by the Chairperson Departmental Committee on Matters Environment, Forestry and Matters Mining, that members of the National Assembly will be resuming debate this afternoon. Also lined up for debate this afternoon is the Statute Laws Miscellaneous Amendment Bill. This is National Assembly Bills number 60 of the year 2022. This particular bill is by the leader of the majority party, currently at the second stage. And what happens at the second reading of the bill is that members of the National Assembly are set to make their contributions in regards to the amendments proposed in this Statute Laws Miscellaneous Amendment Bills. The report of the United Nations Convention Against the Corruption and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption meeting is a motion by the leader of the delegation that this House adopts the report of the Kenyan delegation to the Parliamentary Dialogue on the United Nations Convention Against Matters Corruption and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption Annual General Meeting held in Doha, Qatar from the 8th to the 9th of March, and the report by this particular committee was laid on the table of the House on Wednesday, 26th of April. Given priority today in the order paper is the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, Bill number 16 of the year 2023. And to just give you probably the principal object of this particular bill is that it seeks to amend the Public Finance Management Act number 18 of the year 2012 to operationalize the public debt and borrowing. And this is with regard to a framework for monitoring the level of public debt and aligning it with the provisions of Article 214, subsection C of the Constitution, which defines public debt to mean all financial obligations attendant to loans raised or guaranteed and securities issued or guaranteed by the national government. Clause 4 of the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill seeks to amend Section 15 to provide for the financial obligations to be maintained at a sustainable level as advised by the Public Debt Management Office and Parliament. It also deletes the word national debt and substitutes, therefore, with the words public debt, as the Constitution defines public debt and not national debt. The bill also seeks to amend Section 50 of the Act to provide for the Cabinet Secretary to give an explanation to Parliament in writing where the public debt exceeds the threshold set out in law and in the remedial plan. Clause 7 of the bill seeks to amend the Act by introducing a new paragraph, Section 3, to add functions of the Public Debt Management Office, including advising Parliament and the Cabinet Secretary on the sustainable levels of public debt and annual borrowing limit. The National Assembly has raised the requisite quorum this afternoon. Allow me to hand you over to...
Communication from the chair.
Are they there? Honorable members, I wish to recognize a delegation from the County Assembly of Kirinyaga who are seated in the Speaker's Gallery. The delegation comprises members of the County Assembly's Committee on Powers and Privileges. They are Honorable Muteti Murimi, Speaker of the County Assembly and Chairperson of the Committee of Powers and Privileges, Honorable Timothy Kathuri, Vice Chair, Honorable Geoffrey Gakuru, Member, Honorable Charles Nyaga, Member, Honorable Milka Thoiti, Member, Honorable Lucy Mwaniki, Member, and Honorable Joseph Kiragu, Member. Honorable members, the delegation is accompanied by the Clerk of the County Assembly, Mr. Kamau Aidi, and 5 other staff members. They are on a benchmarking with the National Assembly Committee of Powers and Privileges to learn, share experiences, and best practices in the execution of their mandate. Honorable members, on my own behalf and that of the National Assembly, I welcome the distinguished delegation from Kirinyaga to Parliament and wish them fruitful engagements with the counterpart committee. Thank you. Next.
Order number 3, messages.
Honorable members, there's a message from the Senate on the passage of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 5 of 2022. Honorable members, pursuant to the provision of Standing Order 41-4 of the National Assembly Standing Orders, I wish to convey to the House that I have received a message from the Senate regarding the passage of the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 5 of 2022. Honorable members, the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Amendment Bill, Senate Bill number 5 of 2022, was published via Gazette Supplement number 176 of 8 November 2022 as a bill to amend the Parliamentary Powers and Privileges Act to provide for a structured mechanism through which Parliament is able to receive reports from public officers on the resolutions passed by Parliament and for connected purposes. Honorable members, the message conveys that on Tuesday, 13th June 2023, the Senate considered and passed the said bill with amendments. Honorable members, having considered and passed the bill, the Senate now seeks the concurrence of the National Assembly on the bill, pursuant to Article 110(4) of the Constitution and Standing Orders 46(1) of the Senate Standing Orders. Honorable members, Standing Order 1431C of the National Assembly Standing Orders requires the Speaker to cause a bill received from the Senate to be read a first time upon conveyance of its message. I therefore direct the clerk to have the bill listed in the order paper for the first reading at the next sitting. After being read for the first time, The bill will stand committed to the Committee of Powers and Privileges for consideration. I thank you.
Order number 4, petitions.
Honorable members, take the nearest seats. Honorable members, I have a petition regarding tamaking of Kiganjo, Mugudha, Gwakairu Link Road. Honorable members, Article 119 of the Constitution accords any person the right to petition Parliament to consider any matter within its authority. Further, Standing Order 2252B requires the Speaker to report to the House any petition other than those presented by a member. In this regard, honorable members, I wish to report to the House that my office has received a petition from a consortium of petitioners from Juja and Ruiru constituencies calling for urgent tamaking of the Kiganjo, Mugudha, Gwakairu Link Road that traverses the two constituencies. Honorable members, the petitioners are composed of the management, employees, students, and stakeholders of the Nairobi Institute of Business Studies, Rexall Markt Supermarket, Sahara Ridge Estate, Kimbo, Nebs Village, Wembley Queen Gardens, Ray Gardens, Spa Mall, Lizzie Wanyoike Preparatory School, the GSU Reke office in Ruiru, St. Thomas Catholic Church, petitioning through one Mr. Lewis Gishini of P.O. Box 4364 Nairobi. The petitioners decried the sorry state of the Kiganjo, Mugudha, Gwakairu Link Road, which is a critical access road for business operators, transporters, and the general public, as well as the GSU Reke squad that utilizes it for emergency movements and operations in the area. The petitioners have added that they have regularly teamed up to upgrade the 1.5 kilometer road to Maram status at their own costs, but these short-term interventions are always proven futile during rain season and additionally on account of the massive traffic that wears off the link road quickly. Additionally, the petitioners are concerned about the perennial health hazards caused by the dust emanating from the road that makes over 15,000 students and residents vulnerable to health complications. Honorable members, in light of these recurrent challenges, the petitioners seek the urgent intervention of the National Assembly in facilitating the upgrading to bitumen standards of the Kiganjo, Mugudha, Gwakairu Link Road, inclusive of the railways and Thika Superhighway underpass that borders Kenyatta University's Ruiru campus in order to create an alternative access to and exit from the superhighway in light of the perennial heavy traffic jams at the Ruiru Kimbo underpass. Honorable members, having established that the matter raised in the petition is well within the authority of this House, and further that the matters raised in this petition are not pending before any court of law, constitutional or legal body, I hereby commit the petition to the Public Petitions Committee for consideration pursuant to Standing Order 208A. The committee is required to consider the petition and report its findings to the House and to the petitioner in accordance with Standing Order 2272. I thank you. Honorable members, ordinarily we give the House a few minutes. We'll give you 30 minutes to comment. If the interest is massive, I'll give you 2 minutes to each. Minority Leader.
Mr. Speaker, let me say that that petition is merited. It is a petition that is sound. I happen to know that network, that road network. I know when I was still in the corporate world, I used to live in Thika town some years back. So I know that area fairly well. I don't want to say that. I don't know the Bechungwa. But Mr. Speaker, therefore the committee concerned should expedite that petition, that processing of that petition for it to yield some results. But then, Mr. Speaker, the question one would also want to ask is, how come the agencies tasked with the duty of doing roads, that is Kenha, Kera, Kura, can't be able to prioritize such roads. That they have to wait to be prodded by petitioners and by this house. Okay? The fact that that area is notorious for traffic jam is something which is of public notoriety. And I'm sure the relevant agencies are aware. So I think even as we process this petition, let the agencies concerned wake up from their slumber. Yes, and proactively deal with such cases. I have a case in point in my constituency where we used to lose people every other day through traffic accidents, road accidents, on account of lack of bumps, speed bumps. It took a long time for the relevant agencies to come in and put those bumps. So I think this is a wake-up call, in my view. Yes, and I support really that process if it can be expedited.
Thank you, Bowen.
Mr. Speaker, I want to support the petition. And Mr. Speaker, the petition is just a one example of how many of our dilapidated roads across the country. Mr. Speaker, the central Kenya, for instance, is majorly an agricultural area. And Mr. Speaker, 99% of our transport is by road network. Even as we sit here as members, all of us in our constituencies, we have roads. Some of us, we don't have even tarmacs. We have not even seen a tarmac. So we are only seeking that we can get even just a Maram road to have the farmers take their produce to the nearby markets. Mr. Speaker, it's a big concern, not only to the people because the road cutting to central Kenya, but across the country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, in Kerio Valley, where I come from, the reason why we have a serious insecurity because the police doesn't have even access to follow those animals when they are stolen, because there is no road. So, Mr. Speaker, we are saying, as we appropriate even monies in this House, Mr. Speaker, let us focus on the common, ordinary 190, because those are the basic, instead of focusing on KQ, where very few of us are using air transport. Let's focus on the roads.
Thank you. Yes, Atandi. Honorable Atandi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for this opportunity. Honorable Speaker, I want to support the petition, and the petition is very, very serious. Honorable Speaker, preceding the presentation of this petition here, there have been public protests and demonstrations on this road, and the social media has been awash with people protesting about the state of this road. And the fact that it called for the citizens to present this petition here shows the ineffectiveness of public institutions or the laziness of people serving in this government, that they have to wait for frustrated citizens to come to Parliament to get service. And so, Honorable Speaker, this is happening across the country, that we have maybe a government that is deaf. I want to urge government to be sensitive to the plight of Kenyans, especially Kenyans complaining from regions that ideally voted or supported this government, and they still have to shout. I think that last week we were talking about public protests, and we were saying here, Honorable Speaker, that we should allow Kenyans to protest even here in the National Assembly. And the majority leader say that Kenyans don't need to protest here. So I think this is an example that we have to be open, democratic, and allow Kenyans to express themselves wherever they are. But more fundamentally, let us urge this government to wake up and serve the people that gave them the mandate to rule. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I support.
Yes, Speaker.
Yes, your neighbor.
Yes.
Oundo.
Politically, is also my neighbor on the ground. Honorable Speaker, I stand also to support the petition. The issue of road infrastructure not alone the specific road, but all over the country, is becoming a dangerous issue that requires concerted efforts. Again, it is alarming that the residents have to petition, have to protest for their needs to be identified. I do believe that the committee in charge of roads and infrastructure should prioritize this project, because eventually they're the ones who have got the pass, who make budgets as required in the Constitution. I urge them to speedily move by the next budget to include the same. Honorable Speaker, even in my own constituency, we have the road coming from Matayos all the way to Bremia that has been under professional opinion after tendering was completed in 2016, and there has been no movement at all in any activity. Probably will soon also prepare a petition and also stage a massive protest akin to our usual mandamano, so that the deaf government can listen to us. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Milemba. Give the mic to Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. As I support the great the petitioners who have actually thought it right to write to Parliament for the sake of getting service from government, I want to appreciate that indeed the roads in many places, and particularly also in my own area, are in a very bad state. And particularly the road from Stendikisa and Musuti going all the way to towards the leader of minorities area, through Humusalaba to Yala, is in a very bad state. And I think as we have passed the budget, the authorities in charge should quickly move to actually deal with that road, because it's in a very deplorable state, which is not good for the people. Honorable Speaker, I support the petitioners and encourage all other petitioners having challenges of that sort to actually petition Parliament. Thank you.
Member for Manyata.
Honorable Speaker, I also rise, as my colleagues have said, to say thank you to the petitioners. And also, Honorable Speaker, add my voice to the issue of roads in this country. Honorable Speaker, yesterday we passed the finance bill, and I would really appeal to the government through the relevant ministries to look at the issue of road and road maintenance. Honorable Speaker, we have invested a lot on the infrastructure of roads, but the challenge of maintenance, looking at challenges that are the potholes of these roads, Honorable Speaker, is something that requires a better approach in terms of procurement. We should have contractors getting 10 or 20 years of maintenance of these roads, or a consistent budget that will ensure our roads, Honorable Speaker, don't become an hazard. Honorable Speaker, I also want to add my voice and say, while we have other members saying, also in our area we have challenges of road, and one of the roads is Ena Kidhemo Kevo Road, a road that is very, in an area that is very lucrative in terms of agriculture, where Mira comes from, where we have maize and a lot of other things, Honorable Speaker, which is what I would like to see being done. Honorable Speaker, maintenance and compensation of the people that are affected when roads are being maintained is also a challenge. Ring Road was constructed in Embu, touching from Kibogo, going all the way to Kiriare. But, Honorable Speaker, we have members there that have not been compensated of the land they gave during the construction of that road. Honorable Speaker, I appeal.
Wangari.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support the petition, and I think what this petition is showing us is that you are actually presiding over a very open parliament, and I think the process we had with the finance bill has also opened these doors to the public to realize that you don't even need to actually go out there for maandamano. You don't even need to picket. You can write directly to this parliament and you can be heard. And the issue of roads, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, is not an issue of one side. And even yesterday, I think we have already embedded the role of this House. We will look for the resources and we will also oversight the resources, Mr. Speaker, because I don't think there's a member of this House who does not have a road that they would want touched. I remember even last Parliament, Mr. Speaker, I was here talking of a road, even this Parliament, from Gilgil to Getare, that I have spoken about last Parliament, this Parliament. And these resources, Mr. Speaker, it is our duty not only to provide them, not only to raise the money, but to oversight to ensure that this money goes to what it is supposed to do. But more importantly, is that this parliament is a listening parliament, that we have a whole committee on petitions, Mr. Speaker, that members of the public can be able to interact with us and be able to raise issues directly to the parliament. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity.
John Waluke.
Thank you very much, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support the petitioner. Honorable Speaker, with this government, we are having a lot of hopes that roads infrastructure are going to be done. Honorable Speaker, we passed a motion here, 2016, about 20 kilometers in every constituency to be done. And it started in some of the constituencies, Honorable Speaker, but in other constituencies has not been done. Honorable Speaker, like in my constituency, Chwele Sirisia Wahaha Road, Honorable Speaker, the road is bad, and you know, even you, Honorable Speaker, the trucks are very many there because it is the exit from Uganda now to Mombasa. So, Honorable Speaker, that is one of the problems that I am having in my constituency. And there is an OCBD there, OCS I mean, who is doing business with the cement companies, that they are dumping cement at Luahaha custom, and then it is transported through to Uganda. And that road is low volume, Mr. Speaker. It is not allowed for the big trucks. So I support, thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the petition, and this shows that so long as you are a Kenyan, you are entitled and you have the right to petition this House so that your issues and concerns can be looked at. Okay. Mr. Speaker, in my constituency, Bere North, we have roads also, which requires urgent attention, and I'm sure this government will be able to give those roads an urgent attention. And they are in an extremely bad state. One of the roads from Gikuare to Momenje to Kirie is in a terrible, that road is in a terrible situation. I have written several letters, Mr. Speaker, to the Minister in charge of infrastructure and roads to ensure that we get a budget for the maintenance of that road, as well as the road from Kanyombora to Kamomo all the way to Chicago. I appreciate that we have a contractor on site, but the speed in terms of moving on the ground is a bit questionable. I wish that now that we have a budget, will be transmitted to that contractor so that road can be constructed and people of Bere North can be able to enjoy the services as other Kenyans. Mr. Speaker, I support this petition. Thank you.
Hassan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also support this important petition, and this is a typical, example of the roads that are extremely pathetic in this country, especially in my constituency. The road from Lefe, Finno, Arabia, Mandera Road, that is extremely pathetic and really taken, the lives of over 50 people. The roads, especially in northeastern, are maram. you rarely see tarmac roads. Some of the places really, you know, the terrorists are easily, you know, install IEDs. And these IEDs are normally installed in maram roads, not in tarmac roads. We need these roads to be tarmacked, and these agencies, you know, of this country to take it seriously and help the people to use the roads without fear. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I like to support this petition. And Mr. Speaker, once the public starts speaking, kind of like they are seeing that the members of parliament or their representatives are not working. But I want to assure the petitioners that we are also focusing to ensure equal distribution of resources and particular provision of road infrastructure in this country. The Kenya Kwanza government is focusing on this. Some problems that we are going through is as a result of the past, particularly the immediate past government, which did not take keen interest on the survival of the people who require transportation. Mr. Speaker, where there is poor road infrastructure, the cost of transport is very high, the accidents are very high, the cost of trading is very high, the cost of maintenance is very high, there's a lot of wastage of time. I join the other members of parliament here who are saying, going forward, that as Kenya Kwanza, we must sort these problems as a priority. Because if we don't do that, we will be held accountable of so many misdeeds of the past. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this and urge that the government going forward, we will strive to solve these problems. And I want Kenyans to have an assurance that the Kenya Kwanza government is not blind. We are seeing, we are hearing, and we shall endeavor to sort out this problem. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Beatrice Elachi.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to support and to appreciate that we've just passed the budget in this House, Mr. Speaker, and I'm hoping now, especially the expressway that was built, when you look at the drainage, Mr. Speaker, if you are driving under and it is raining, you can cause an accident so easily. So it is time they have to put the right drainage, and they also have to now clear the lower road that they messed up. And Mr. Speaker, when you look at all this, the most important thing we must be looking is that most of the roads that were done, Mr. Speaker, were never marked. And so I'm hoping even as we move and look at where we are having challenges, we are also marking roads so that these accidents that we have and all that must come to an end. So as I support Mr. Speaker, I want to say in Nairobi, as much as people will think there are roads, when you enter now in the real streets of Nairobi, you'll find that there's a lot of challenges of roads and even passage. Whenever there's fire or whenever there's an ambulance that is passing, you'll always find challenges, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, as we look at all the roads, let us also endeavor to ensure drainage and sewer is done together. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Kwame.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support the petitioners on the roads which are not really supporting their system there. Mr. Speaker, I'm in the same boat, and I've made noise as a member of parliament. Our people have expressed their concern, and nothing is happening. I wish to register really also my concern about the road in my area. It is a famous one. Even the president himself has spoken several times about it. This is the road from Kadel, Palatu Kanyadhiang, I wish it is taken care of in line with what the President told us. Mr. Speaker, this is a very important concern for our people in Karachuonyo, and I thank you for having given me opportunity to express myself about it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Speaker, and I also wish to support the petitioner. And with the rider that the petitioner petitioned the National Assembly, not the ministry. Why, Mr. Speaker? It is because it is this House that taxes the people. It is this House that legislates on taxing, on how to tax the Kenyan people. It is also this House that legislates on how to appropriate the money. So I think it is time we wake up and ensure that problems such as these are sorted at the level of budget making. So that we do not, after budget making process, Mr. Speaker, is not a ceremony. That we just look at it and make noise and fight each other here. It should be a process that ensures all the problems which have been cited by the people of this country are ensured, or we ensure that it is factored in the budget making process in this House. So that, Mr. Speaker, we sort all these problems. Speaker, there has been accidents even in this country. Forget about even those people who are searching for roads. There has been several accidents in this country because of the way roads are made. In countries which have developed, Speaker, roads almost everywhere is dual carriage. There are no accidents, zero accidents. It is also high time this House look at how do we make these roads accident-free and make it possible for the people of this country. I thank you, Speaker.
Member for Kamukunji.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity, and I want to support the petition and the petitioner. And I think it is important to contribute to the construction of our roads. Roads have been an important component of any development process, particularly for major urban centers and some of our rural areas. One thing I have concern with roads is the lack of maintenance. It seems now we have a culture of not bothering about maintenance at all. And this culture is leaving a lot of damaged roads unattended to and leaving until they're completely worn out or completely collapsed before any investment is done, which is a very higher investment than normal. And I think maybe we should start thinking about maintenance. And I don't know whether this would require an amendment to the various road acts that we have in our country, but it is important that, in fact, we do invest more in our roads. The second point is about petitions. I have been here, this is my fourth time, Mr. Speaker, and petitions normally are not followed up and not executed very well in terms of the final decisions, and many petitions disappear in between, and I think we should look into that, and the House should make sure that those petitions are implemented and executed. Thank you.
Member for Turkana, Nicholas. Give Nicholas the mic.
Thank you, Speaker, for this chance. I rise to support the petitioner and looking on what is stating in his petition. Mr. Speaker, this takes me back to my own constituency, whereby the issue of tarmac roads is just a theory. Even to our students in our schools, in my schools from my constituency, they just read the word tarmac in the books, but seeing it practically, it is a nightmare. So this takes me back to the bill which was passed in this House in the 11th Parliament, that is in 2016, whereby we agreed that all the 290 constituencies to be allocated money for tarmacking the roads. And up to date, a constituency like Turkana East, there is no tarmac, even an inch of a tarmac road in Turkana East. And there is a road, I see one road, which crosses the constituency, my constituency, and also connects the county of Baringo. That is the road from Chamalingot Junction, Faikapedo, Napeitom Lokori, then to the A1 road in Lokchar. Mr. Speaker, such a roads, they are supposed to be tarmac for the people there to have a good transport, because road network, it is good for so many development in every area. So I support the petitioner, and I think we also going to continue with the petition this house to locate the
member for Kajiado North.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also rise to add my voice on the petition, as I also thank the petitioners for using the right channel. And Mr. Speaker, it seems we have a very informed society and people, because, Mr. Speaker, they have resulted with what the Constitution allows them to do, Mr. Speaker. Petitioning this House, drawing the attention of members, the Committee on Infrastructure, the Committee on Budget. And Mr. Speaker, equally in my constituency, I have several roads that, Mr. Speaker, were started by the last regime that up to date have not received any funding or have not even started, Mr. Speaker. And this one raises a big question, Mr. Speaker, on the issues of planning. And I want to ask this House, as we consider this petition, let us be good planners, people who plan with the resources at hand, so that we might not end up with borrowing from the back door and also having roads that are incomplete just by the mere fact that we did not plan and we did not use the opportunity to procure the correctly, Mr. Speaker, to put in resources that are enough to complete roads, and so that we have a lot of unfinished projects. I thank the petitioners, but I also draw the attention of this House that we need to do proper planning so that we have roads that start, get completed, Mr. Speaker, and remain to be projects that are used. And continuously, we will have a society that plans well, executes well, and people benefit from the projects that have been approved by this House. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Members, we will stop there. The petition is committed to the relevant committee in the terms that I read out. Honorable members, allow me to acknowledge in the Speaker's Gallery, Chogoria Boys High School from Mara constituency, Tharaka Nithi. In the public gallery in Jabini Junior Secondary from Kinangop, Nyandarua. And then Marmanet Secondary School from Laikipia West, Laikipia. On my own behalf and on your behalf, I welcome them to the House of Parliament. Yes, Murugara? If you want to welcome a school from your constituency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Take the opportunity to speak for everybody.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I welcome Chogoria Boys High School. It's not in my constituency, but it's in the neighboring constituency of Mara in Tharaka Nithi County. One of the best schools in our county, and we are proud of them. I also welcome the students from Jabini and Marmanet. All of them, they feel welcome to the House and follow the proceedings as we do them. These are leaders of tomorrow, the future leaders of Kenya, and mine would be to encourage them to continue working very hard in school, to be disciplined, and always to remember that the motto of the country is education is everything for everyone. So welcome and all the best as you watch our deliberations. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next order.
Order number 5, papers.
Majority Leader. Chepkonga.
I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah,
This is-
the acting majority leader.
No, temporary one.
Temporary.
You know, if you say acting, I must be having a letter. I thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of the majority leader, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following papers on the table of the House today, Thursday, 22nd June 2023, in the afternoon, this afternoon sitting. One, the draft charter for Open Universities of Kenya from the University of Education, from the Ministry of Education, Mr. Speaker. Two, the report of the Auditor General and financial statements of Road Maintenance Levy Fund for the year ended 30th June 2022, Kenya Urban Roads Authority. Three, reports of the Auditor General and financial statements in respect of the following institutions for the year ended 30th June 2022 and the certificates therein. One, Kenya Railways Corporation. Two, National Housing Corporation. Three, Kenya Civil Aviation Authority. Four, National Oil Corporation of Kenya Limited. And five, Energy and Petroleum Regulatory Authority. I thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Chepkonga. Chairperson, Departmental Committee on Labor, Karemba. Give the mic to Honorable Mchangi.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I can hear some members here referring to me as Atuoli, and I wish to state categorically that my name is Mushangi Karemba and not Atuoli. And there is no relationship between me and that cannot be a compliment. Thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 22nd June 2023, report of the Departmental Committee on Labor on its consideration of the Public Service Internship Bill, National Assembly Bill number 63 of 2022. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Caroline Ngelechei, Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Thursday, 22nd June 2023. Report of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security on the vetting of Ms. Anne Njoki Wangombe for the appointment as Principal Secretary, State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Women Rep Kirinyaga, I give you 1 minute to welcome the delegation from your county. Give Jerry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome the delegation from the County Assembly Kirinyaga, led by the Honorable Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, the members reminded me that this House promised that we will be looking into the Ward Development Fund so that we can secure and ensure that they are able to do their oversight mandate. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Jerry. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
Honorable Dorothy Ikiara. Give the mic on. Honorable Dorothy, proceed.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to give notice of the following motion. That aware that Article 21(3) of the Constitution provides that all state organs have the duty to address the needs of vulnerable groups within the society. Further aware that the Persons with Disabilities Cash Transfer Program, PWSDCT, is one of the 4 cash transfer programs implemented by the government as part of the overall social protection intervention, noting that caregivers undertaking the immense responsibility of providing daily care and assistance to persons with severe disabilities. Oftentimes, the immediate family members of the PWSD concerned that this causes disproportionate burden on these families as persons who would otherwise be engaged in gainful employment or other activities to provide for families are limited by these immense responsibilities. Further concerned that this loss of income, opportunities, and resources exacerbates the challenges faced by these families, cognizant that the government ought to take action to recognize the invaluable contribution of caregivers and support them in caring for individuals with severe disabilities. Now, therefore, this House resolves that the government, through the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection, recognizes primary caregivers or persons with severe disability as a distinct category requiring social protection and support, and further develops and implement a cash transfer program for these primary caregivers. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa. Caroline Ngelechei, Departmental Committee on Administration and Inter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Appointment of the Principal Secretary, the State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services. That taking into consideration the finding of the Departmental Committee on Administration and Internal Security in its report on the vetting of a nominee for appointment of Principal Secretary, State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services laid on the table of the House on Thursday, 22nd June 2023, and pursuant to the provision of Article 155, 3B of the Constitution and Section 8.1 of the Public Appointment Parliamentary Approval Act 2011 approves the appointment of Ms. Anne Njoki Wangombe as Principal Secretary, State Department for Performance Management and Delivery Services. Thank you.
Thank you, Ngelechei. Next order.
Order number 7, questions and statements.
Honorable Anthony Kibagendi. Statement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 43.1, I wish to make a statement on the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking. It's celebrated every 26th day of June, whose theme this year is People First, Stop Stigma and Discrimination, Strengthen Prevention. Honorable Speaker, pursuant to Standing Order 259A, the Parliamentarians Against Drug and Substance Abuse Caucus was established and received recognition and approval from the Speaker on the 23rd November, the year 2022. The caucus is mandated to contribute to the prevention and substance use and other social problems to significantly improve the society's health, safety, well-being by receiving and enhancing legislative and institutional frameworks to combat illicit drug abuse. Honorable Speaker, the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking is commemorated by people, nations, organizations, and parliaments across the world in a bid to strengthen action and cooperation to realize a world free of drug abuse. Parliaments in particular have a vital role to play in the fight against drugs and substance abuse. Hence, the need for this House to re-examine already existing legislation in the wake of contemporary issues in the sale of illicit substances, specifically and the online sale of drugs. Honorable Speaker, it is a known fact that there is an upsurge in drugs and illicit substance abuse in the country, and we can see that from our Deputy President, who is one of our biggest campaigners. Members can attest that many young people in our constituency are now more than ever before at the greatest risk of wasting away due to drugs abuse. Many drug abusers face stigma, discrimination, which further harm their physical and mental health, and consequently prevent them from accessing the help they need. To successfully tackle this problem, this House should adopt a people-centered approach in formulating drug-related policies and laws with a keen focus on compassion, human rights, and evidence-based practices. Honorable Speaker, as I present this statement on behalf of Parliamentarians Against Drug and Substance Abuse Caucus, I'm honored to report to this House that the caucus has already embarked on a journey to reinforce the fight against this vice. Further, the caucus is in receipt of an invitation from NACADA to commemorate this day on Monday, 26th June 2023 at the Bomas of Kenya. Lastly, Honorable Speaker, the concerted effort by the current administration, spearheaded by the Deputy President, His Excellency Rigathi Gachagua, demonstrates the severity of this menace. It is for this reason that I invite members to join in the fight against drugs and substance abuse by participating in the activities of the day by NACADA and supporting creating awareness. And Mr. Speaker, I'm requesting that we encourage members on that day. I'll be sharing in our group the theme for this year. And Mr. Speaker, I would also like to table the national survey on the status of drugs and substance abuse in Kenya, an abridged version. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Well done, Kibagendi. You are actually the first caucus to bring any statement to the floor of the House, and that's commendable. I wish you the best in what you are doing to eliminate the menace of drugs in our society. Next order. Majority Leader, your Thursday statement.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Pursuant to the provisions of Standing Order 44.2a, I rise to give the following statement on behalf of the House Business Committee, which met on Tuesday, 20th June 2023, to prioritize the business for consideration during the week. As members are aware, this week the House has considered the following bills and other priority budget-related business. 1, the Appropriations Bill, National Assembly Bill number 27 of 2023. 2, the Finance Bill, National Assembly Bill number 14 of 2023. 3, the County Allocation of Revenue Bill, Senate Bills number 16 of 2023. 4, the Equalization Fund Appropriation Bill, Senate Bill number 2 of 2023. 5, Supplementary Estimates number 2 for the financial year 2022-2023, and the Supplementary Appropriation Bill number 2 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee has severally proposed that the sittings of the House be extended to accord the House time to conclude with all stages of these bills and priority budget-related business. I wish to take this opportunity to thank you, all honorable members of this House, for the sacrifice, the active participation, and overall contribution to the improvement of our lawmaking at every stage of the process. Representation of our people and critically exercising our crucial mandate as bestowed upon us by the people of Kenya. Honorable Speaker, in accordance with the provisions of Standing Order 42A, 5, and 6, I wish to convey that the following cabinet secretaries are scheduled to appear before the House to respond to questions as follows. A, the Cabinet Secretary for Water, Sanitation and Irrigation to appear on the afternoon of Wednesday, 28 June 2023 to respond to the following questions. 1 question by private notice number 007 of 2023 by the member for Alego Songa constituency, the Honorable Samuel Atandi MP, regarding the collapsing dikes around Lake Kanyaboli, which have resulted to the flooding of the area and displacement of the people. 2, question number 158 of 2023 by the member for Ikolomani constituency, Honorable Bernard Shinali MP, regarding the implementation of the Moyes Bridge Matunda Water Supply and Sanitation Project. And 3, question number 159 of 2023 by the member for Turkana Central, Honorable Joseph Emade, MP, regarding the status of Naoros and Nadoto irrigation scheme in Turkana County. B is the Cabinet Secretary for Labor and Social Protection to appear on the afternoon of Wednesday, 28 June 2023, to respond to the following questions. One, question number 088 of 2023 by the member for Konoin constituency, Honorable Brighton Yegon, MP, regarding the welfare of Kenyans working in Saudi Arabia and efforts geared towards regulated licensing of recruiting agencies. Two, question number 089 of 2023 by the member for Ayata constituency, Honorable Robert Basil, MP, regarding incorporation of senior citizens into the Older Persons Cash Transfer Scheme. Three, question number 090 of 2023 by the member for Konoin constituency, Honorable Brighton Yegon, MP, regarding formulation policy framework to support children whose parents or guardians are incarcerated. Four, question number 091 of 2023 by the member for Machakos County, Honorable Joyce Kamene, MP, regarding the plight of orphans, widows, and widowers in the country. Five, question number 092 of 2023 by the member for Kirinyaga, who is seated behind me, the Honorable Jane Jerry Maina, regarding the effectiveness of Inua Jamii program since its inception. And six, question number 160 of 2023 by the member for Kiambu constituency, Honorable John Mashua Waithaka, MP, regarding eligibility of cancer survivors being registered as persons with disabilities. C, Honorable Speaker, is the Cabinet Secretary for Lands, Public Works, Housing and Urban Development to appear on the afternoon of Wednesday, 28 June 2023 to respond to the following questions. One, question 084 of 2023 by member for Mwingi Central constituency, Honorable Gideon Muliungi, MP, regarding errors in title deeds for parcels of land in Mui Coal Basin. Two, question number 085 of 2023 by the same member, Gideon Muliungi, regarding the high mast security lighting project in Mwingi Town. Question number 086 2023 by the member for Saboti constituency, Honorable Caleb Amisi, MP, regarding ownership status of the parcel of land LR numbers 5004/30/R, currently occupied by Kwale International Sugar Company. Four, question number 087 of 2023 by the member for Laisamis constituency, the Honorable Joseph Lekuton, MP, regarding review of the boundaries bordering Laisamis constituency. Question number 109 of 2023 by the member for Nakuru Town East constituency, the Honorable David Gikaria, MP, regarding Kazim Taani Project Phase 3. Question number 117 of 2023 by the member for Embakasi West constituency, Honorable Mark Mwenje, MP, regarding status of ownership of land popularly referred to as MCO in Molem Ward in Embakasi West constituency. And seven, question number 246 of 2023 by the member for Kibwezi West constituency, the Honorable Mwengi Mutuse, MP, regarding delayed payment of compensation to residents whose land was compulsorily acquired in 2017 for construction of Kibwezi Kitui Road. Honorable Speaker, in regard to the business for Tuesday next week, the House is expected to consider a special motion on the nomination for appointment as a chairperson of the Commission on Revenue Allocation and nomination for appointment as a member of the Salaries and Remuneration Commission. Debate will also be undertaken on the following business should it not be concluded today. One, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. Two, the Statute Law Miscellaneous Amendments Bill, National Assembly Bill number 60 of 2022. Three, report on ratification of the amended Nairobi Convention and the Protocol for the Protection of Marine and Coastal Environment of the Western Indian Ocean from land-based sources and activities. Four, report on ratification of the Kigali Amendment on the Montreal Protocol on the substances that deplete the ozone layer. Five, report on ratification of the Bamako Convention on the ban of the importation into Africa and control of transboundary movement and management of hazardous waste within Africa. And finally, six, report of the Kenyan delegation to the Parliamentary Dialogue on United Nations Convention Against Corruption, UNCAC, and Global Parliamentarians Against Corruption, GOPAC, Annual General Meeting. Honorable Speaker, the House Business Committee shall reconvene on Tuesday, 27 June 2023 to schedule the business for the rest of the week. And I wish to lay this statement on the table of the House. And my apologies, it was quite a long one today.
Thank you, Majority Leader. Honorable members, the following schools are in the House, in the Speaker's Gallery. Mangu High School, Juja in Murang'a. I thought Juja was in Kiambu. Is in Juja in Kiambu? So Mangu High School, Juja in Kiambu and not Murang'a. Sekenani Boarding Primary School, Narok West in Narok in the public gallery. Shumvi Mixed Day Secondary School, Laikipia North in Laikipia. On my behalf and on your own behalf as a house, we welcome the students and their teachers to the House of Parliament. Next order.
Order number 8, the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, second reading.
Majority Leader. Majority Leader, due to time constraint, how much time do you want us to spend on this order?
Even 40 minutes, Mr. Speaker, if we'll be done, it would be good enough. Maximum an hour.
Go ahead.
Because there is also the other order number 9.
Yes.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to move the Public Finance Management Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023. Honorable Speaker, allow me first to begin by thanking the chairperson of the Public Debt and Privatization Committee, the Honorable Shuria, ably deputized by the Honorable Makali Mulu, who tabled this report of the committee yesterday, because we were able to consider this bill. They did public participation, I think, over the last 2 or so weeks, and were able to table a very good report with very good recommendations, and come up even with certain amendments that are critical to the implementation of this bill. Honorable Speaker, the principal objective of this bill, as has been enumerated in the bill, or listed in the bill, first is to amend the Public Finance Management Act of number 18 of 2012 to operationalize the public debt and borrowing with regards to the framework for monitoring the level of public debt, to align with the provisions of Article 214(2) of the Constitution, which defines public debt. And this article defines public debt to mean all financial obligations attendant to loans raised or guaranteed and securities issued or guaranteed by the national government. Honorable Speaker, the Public Finance Management Act of 2012 does not offer this clear definition of what public debt is. And it is important, Honorable Speaker, therefore, to define public debt in such a manner that it covers all elements of our public debt, because you could define public debt as just our national government debt without considering what is guaranteed by our national government to our county governments or even to government state-owned enterprises. And therefore, a holistic definition was necessary, and that is part of the objectives of this bill. Two, Honorable Speaker, we are confronted with a situation where we, as a country, and indeed many other countries in Africa and beyond, are confronted with a heavy question of public debt and its management in the running of our economies, Honorable Speaker. And Kenya has been no exception. We have had a situation where we are almost at the brink of being unable to manage our own debt. Should we allow things to go the way they are going without us taking cognizance, one, of the global economy, what is happening in the global economy with the war in Ukraine, with the inflation around the world, both in Europe, in the US, the large devaluation of our shilling against the major currencies, especially the US dollar, which was occasioned, as I mentioned, by inflation being very high in the US. Honorable Speaker, you know they say that when the US's economy coughs, the rest of the world catches a cold. And therefore, we have been no exception. Post-COVID, Honorable Speaker, And you remember in the US, there were a lot of government freebies, money being given to the populace. To an extent, Honorable Speaker, that after the pandemic, there are people in the US who are opting not to work because the kind of welfare monies they were getting from the state was at times even better than what they were getting when they were working. And that has driven inflation very high and occasioned the Fed rate in the US to be increased in a manner that it has not happened, I think, since the Great Recession in the US. And that increment in interest rates, Honorable Speaker, is what you've seen cause the problems we have here today with our dollar, which was trading at an average of about 120 less than a year ago. Today, I think it's an average of about 132 to 140 shillings against the dollar for the Kenya shilling. And the Kenya shilling, Mr. Speaker, I must say, has tried to be quite resilient. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, considering that there are all those global effects, we must be very careful how we treat our public debt. And let me thank the committee, because one of the things that were in this bill was a provision, a clause where the National Treasury sought, if they burst the debt ceiling, to come and report to the House post facto, and that is one of the recommendations that the committee has noted and actually recommended. I was trying to get it in the report, Honorable Speaker, recommended that this should not be a post facto approval by Parliament, because we cannot abrogate our role and our mandate to oversight government, and they come to report to us, because this would be abused, just like Article 223 of the Constitution has been abused, where people spend money and come to report to us after the event. And I think I want to support what the committee has recommended, that should we go beyond the debt ceiling, the debt threshold, Honorable Speaker, and I'll speak to that because that is the second objective of this bill, that should the National Treasury go beyond the debt threshold, then they ought to come for approval from Parliament before busting that threshold. Honorable Speaker, if you allow me to speak to the second objective of this bill, which is to migrate us from the absolute figure of a debt ceiling that we have been using in terms of measuring our debt carrying capacity to a threshold, which is popularly or otherwise known as a debt anchor. And the proposal for an economy like ours would be a debt anchor of about 55%, and that is what this bill is proposing, a debt anchor of 55%, plus or minus 5%. And Honorable Speaker, I also do note the committee had observed that plus or minus, that if you are in the negative of 55%, then you are still okay, you are not in the red, and therefore proposed to amend that to remove the minus and just say a threshold of 55% plus 5. Honorable Speaker, I had a discussion with the chair and proposed maybe we need to reconsider that, because the intent, I think, by the National Treasury of saying a threshold of 55% plus or minus is that we are able to signal ourselves, or the country is able to know that if you are at 50%, then you know you are only 5 percentage points to hit your threshold, and therefore be careful even as you appropriate resources and as you plan for your finance bills. You know what amount of resources you need to generate to be able to reduce on your fiscal deficit that will then feed onto the amount of money that you need to borrow. In the same breath, Honorable Speaker, if you are at 55%, you know you have hit the debt threshold that you have placed for yourselves, Honorable Speaker. And anything beyond 55%, moving to 60%, then you're in the red. Currently, Honorable Speaker, as you speak, our debt carrying capacity is sustainable, but at the risk of getting to levels that are unsustainable. And I think that is why the National Treasury and the current administration has purposed that we shall not continue to dig the hole that we are in, because we are already in a hole. We are already past the debt ceiling that we set. If we were to factor in the almost 9.4 trillion shillings that was in the 9.4 trillion shillings that is in debt today, and almost 700, I think, and 18 billion, that is a fiscal deficit that we have budgeted for in the next financial year of 2023-2024. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, if we do not do anything and we continue with the trajectory that we are in, without signals to the economy and even to Parliament itself, that if we have just an absolute figure, and we set the absolute figure of 10 trillion, I think a year ago in 2022, if I remember well, just before the 2022-2023 budget, Honorable Speaker, and it was projected that this would probably take us for another 2 years. But we're already in the red, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the rationale for having an absolute figure, whether it is the 5 trillion shillings, and I think way back in 2014 when I joined this house and found the CPM body in the house, I think we had a figure of 2.5 trillion. And we doubled that to 5 trillion in about 2014-2015, if I remember well. Then we moved that, I remember in 2018, when I was chairing the budget committee, there was a proposal to increase the debt ceiling to 10 trillion shillings. The budget committee then was of a view that we either revert to the debt anchor that we are now reverting to, so where we are able to measure our debt as a ratio of our public debt in terms of ratios, or we maintain our public debt ceiling at 7.5 trillion shillings up to the year 2024, June 2024. And John Buddy, we remember he was a member of that committee. And we had a heated argument with the National Treasury then, and we actually sat in this chamber. But they did insist that they wanted at least 9 trillion shillings, which we gave them. And John Buddy will recall that 9 trillion shillings was to take us to June of 2024. We are here to get to June of 2024. Last year, they came back to us requesting that we move the ceiling up again to 10 trillion shillings. And I remember many of us opposed that move. And I remember even when I was contributing, I reminded them that 3 years ago, we asked you to move to a debt anchor, something that would be signaling when you are getting into the red. But as it were, Honorable Speaker, nobody listened to us. Today, Honorable Speaker, the National Treasury would have opted to come back to us and ask us again to raise the debt ceiling maybe to another 12 or 15 trillion shillings. But the question that we need to ask ourselves, what do these absolute figures measure? What are they a measure of? And Honorable Speaker, they are just figures. I hear CPM body saying it's guesswork. I will avoid using the figure guesswork like John Buddy. But Honorable Speaker, those figures are basically meaningless. They signal nothing, they mean nothing. Today, we could allow the National Treasury to raise the ceiling to 15 trillion shillings. But a country's public debt ought to be sustainable. And the sustainability of a country's public debt, Honorable Speaker, is only measured by a government's ability to be able to meet all its current and future financial obligations. And we can only be able to do that even for companies, Honorable Speaker, and accountants like Mbadi and good economists like the Vice Chair of this committee will tell you. Even for individuals and companies, when you walk into a bank, the bank will not measure your debt carrying capacity with absolute figures. They will use your cash ratios, your liquidity ratios, and that is all we are seeking to do at the macroeconomic level, to use ratios that can signal whether you have the debt carrying capacity that is sustainable for your country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we would ask ourselves, what is the risk then of moving from a debt to a debt anchor away from an absolute figure? Honorable Speaker, one is that people, many people other than economists and finance literate people and very literate people will be able to tell you how you measure debt in present value terms. And that becomes a problem, and that's why you will find it was even easier then to convince Parliament and the House and the country that you are better off with an absolute figure. And I remember that is what we were told in 2014, that you are better off to move away from the debt anchor to an absolute figure where you know your debt ceiling is at 5 or 9 or 10 trillion shillings, and you will know when you are hitting there. But again, Honorable Speaker, we must ask ourselves, what are we measuring with that 10 trillion shillings? If someone was to ask us today, our debt ceiling today is at 10 trillion shillings, what is it a measure of? Is it a measure of our debt carrying capacity? Is it a measure of how sustainable our debt is? And the simple answer is that that absolute figure is meaningless in terms of being able to define whether our debt is sustainable and whether the country has the capacity to carry that amount of debt. Honorable Speaker, on the debt anchor, we also can't close our eyes, Honorable Speaker. And I'll ask the debt committee and the privatization committee, ably chaired by Shuri and vice chaired by economist Dr. Makali Mulu, that you have your work cut out for you. And this House will depend on the privatization and debt committee to be able to review our debt management strategies, not once a year, not biannual, but almost on a quarterly basis, be able to engage with Treasury and be able to know how are we doing in terms of our debt. The Budget and Appropriations Committee, and I don't know if the chair is here, and the Finance Committee also have a role to play. We just passed our finance bill yesterday, Honorable Speaker, that will finance the appropriation bill that we have just passed this morning, Honorable Speaker. And it is this House and the National Treasury that will determine whether this country continues to borrow in a sustainable manner or not. And Honorable Speaker, the deficits that we budget for informs how much more debt we are loading onto our national public debt. And therefore, Honorable Speaker, even as we debated the finance bill yesterday and the day before, even the second reading, I remember many members who said that we did commit to move away from sinking deeper into the pit or the hole of public debt. And the surest way of not sinking deeper, Honorable Speaker, is one, to have a very clear liability management system. And I am glad the National Treasury, in their engagement with the committee, have indicated that they're embarking on a robust liability management program, a liability management program that will ensure that, one, there is actual and almost a fiscal consolidation that you can not only feel but touch. Because we talk about fiscal consolidation, but the fiscal consolidation is just spoken about. But we never actually get into actual fiscal consolidation to ensure, one, that we are cutting on unnecessary expenditure in government. And therefore, that's why I'm saying the Budget and Appropriations Committee has its work cut out. And so does the Debt Management Committee, or rather the Privatization and Public Debt Committee have its work cut out to ensure that whatever deficits we have in our budget books are at a level that is manageable and sustainable. They have their work cut out, Honorable Speaker, to ensure that this liability management program that the National Treasury is talking about is actually actualized. Honorable Speaker, I'm happy when I perused through the report by the committee. You remember from way back in 2014, this country embarked on what were popularly known as the Eurobonds. And some of the problems that we are living under today are a result of those Eurobonds. And Honorable Speaker, you will see in the committee's report, there is a Eurobond of 2014 of $2 billion that is maturing next year. And these are some of the short-term commercial debts that have gotten us into the problems we are. And part of the liability management strategy the National Treasury has, and as they spelled it out to the committee, if you go through the report, you will see, and those who are able to follow the public participation exercise, even from the experts who appeared before the Public Debt Committee, we will see that besides fiscal consolidation to ensure that we continue to narrow our fiscal deficit, there was a call on proper liability management. And I'm glad, Honorable Speaker, as I said, the National Treasury is already working on this liability management program, where, for instance, that $2 billion Euro bond of 2014 that matures in June of 2024, way before it matures, they're already working on a program to ensure that they retire this Euro bond, not by going back again to the commercial market and getting other commercial loans or another Euro bond to succeed this one. Because that is the easier route, Honorable Speaker. And the only reason why governments in Africa and elsewhere have opted for commercial borrowing in Eurobonds is because they usually come without any preconditions. Honorable Speaker, from the time I joined this House in 2013 to the time I was a chairman in the Budget and Appropriations Committee, every other report of the Budget and Appropriations Committee always speaks to the twin issues of fiscal consolidation. It also speaks to our debt management strategy. But as I said, those reports are just filed away. All our recommendations seem not to be followed. There are always recommendations of moving away from commercial debt to more concessional loans that are longer term. Honorable Speaker, I am happy that the National Treasury now is deliberate and intent on moving away from these expensive commercial and short-term loans to longer-term concessional loans, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, concessional loans, okay. Forgive me, Honorable Speaker, it's where I come from. I was about to say concessional loans. Concessional loans, Honorable Speaker, either bilateral or multilateral loans, are loans that we will enjoy cheaper interest rates. And I think the most expensive of these that we are getting today, I think, are about 2.5%, I think, from the China Exim Bank, which go for a period of about 30 to 40 years, as opposed to these Eurobonds that are 10 years. The one that we are retiring today, Makali Mulu will tell you, we got it at 6.8% in 2014. But because of the risks, our risk profile, the spread of this Eurobond, sometime last year, around elections time, I was seeing it had a spread of about 14 to 18%. The highest at one point being at 21%. Meaning if that Eurobond was to be called up, we would pay interest rates of up to 21%. But today, Honorable Speaker, because again, post-elections and with the stabilization of the economy, that spread has come down to a current rate of about 12%. But still 12% is too high for a country like Kenya, a middle-income country and a growing economy like ours. 6.8 is still high, and that is why the National Treasury is saying we look at more concessional loans, which would, the most expensive, be about 2.5%, but there are loans that you get even at 1%, 1.5%, 2%. And Honorable Speaker, I've heard the President speak also to that question of even those concessional, multilateral and bilateral loans, because African countries are also getting those loans very expensive. What African countries are getting at 2.5, 1.5%, you find other economies in the world, especially in the West, getting at 0.1%, like in the US. Others in Europe will get at 0.5 to 0.1, 0 point when we are getting at almost 2 and above 1%, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, let me not belabor the issue of liability management because I can see the committee has spoken into it in detail. I've also spoken about the fiscal consolidation, which, as I said, we have a duty and a responsibility as a House. And I'm happy that what the committee is recommending in part of the recommendations they have proposed to bring during our third reading will touch on some of the issues that a number of people, even during public participation, were not very happy about. I remember the Institute of Social Accountability did present on the particular clause that sought to take over the work of Parliament in our constitutional mandate to oversight the national government and the National Treasury, and that the committee has agreed with people who came through public participation and the concerns even of many of us who felt that we cannot relinquish our responsibility as Parliament to other people who are not elected by the people of Kenya to oversight. Honorable Speaker, let me end it there and request the Honorable Makali Mulu, who is the Vice Chair of this Public Debt Committee and who indeed put in a lot of work and long hours. I remember seeing them working even over our weekend to be able to put together this report for tabling and adoption by the House, and urge the House to support this bill. It will go a long way to helping our country to be able to measure our debt and our debt carrying capacity and be able to know how sustainable our debt is. Just like as individuals, as corporates, for those of us who have managed corporate companies, we are able to get signals of whether we are moving towards the red. And that is all that this bill seeks to do, to alert us and alert the country when we are moving towards the red in terms of our debt carrying capacity and how sustainable our debt is, Honorable Speaker. And with those very many remarks, allow me to ask, I beg to move and ask the Vice Chair, Dr. Makali Mulu, to second. Thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Makali Mulu, Honorable.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, I want to start by thanking the Majority Leader for that good moving of the bill, Honorable Speaker. But it's important, Honorable Speaker, because I'm going to be discussing the committee report, that I make some introductory comments. Honorable Speaker, this bill was presented or was published on 4th May 2023, and it was read a first time in this House, 6th June 2023. Thereafter, Honorable Speaker, you referred to the committee, Public Debt and Privatization Committee, for consideration. And in line with our standing orders, 2 advertisements were placed in Daily Nation and Standard newspaper, calling for stakeholders and individuals to submit their comments on this bill. So, Honorable Speaker, in response to that advertisement, we got some comments from institutions and individuals. And it is important I mention them, Honorable Speaker, that we were able to get submissions from Institute of Social Accountability, TISA, International Budget Partnership, IBP Kenya, Institute of Economic Affairs, and Institute of Certified Public Accountants, Honorable Speaker. We also got submissions from University of Nairobi Women Economic Empowerment Hub, Civil Engineering Contractors Association, as well as individuals, namely Jimmy Wanjiki and Valadine Wangeshi Lukwaro. On the basis of that interaction, Honorable Speaker, the committee was able to prepare a report, and then that report we did table it yesterday, and that's the report, Honorable Speaker. I want just to bring highlights from that report, Honorable Speaker. But before I want to do that, Honorable Speaker, it is also important that I appreciate the support we got from your office, Office of the Clerk of the National Assembly, the support we got from all the stakeholders, Treasury, Honorable Speaker, our Parliamentary Budget Office, and our Legal Department. With this support, Honorable Speaker, we have managed to go through this bill, and the bill has about 7 clauses. So very quickly, I just want to learn clause by clause so that I help honorable members appreciate the bill and be able to make their comments or debate the bill, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, the first clause, which has been amended, is clause 2A, and the objective of this, or the import of this clause, Honorable Speaker, is in the bill we have what we call the county public debt. County public debt. So there is a proposal to delete the word public so that we remain with the county debt. After interacting with the stakeholders, Honorable Speaker, we all did agree that once you delete the word public from the county public debt, then there is a risk of, instead of focusing on public debt, which is guaranteed by the national government, that may also include debts which have been incurred at the county level. For example, most counties are going to the banks and getting bank overdrafts to pay salaries. So there was that strong feeling that if you remove the word public, then you are likely to be even including those lower levels of county debts. So on that basis, we are recommending as a committee, Honorable Speaker, that we retain that as it is. Honorable Speaker, the other proposal under Clause 2, which is Clause 2B, was to provide a divination for financial obligations. And I want Honorable Speaker to look at what the Constitution says about public debt. If you look at Article 214 of our Constitution, public debt is defined as follows. Public debt means all financial obligations attendant to loans raised or guaranteed and securities issued or guaranteed by the national government. So what this bill tries to do, Honorable Speaker, under Clause 2B, is now to come up with a definition of financial obligations so that we have a clear definition and we don't entertain ambiguity in terms of what should be paid or not paid. On that basis, Honorable Speaker, as a committee, Treasury had crafted some definition, and as a committee, we thought it was not good enough to capture what is intended in the Constitution. So we will be, as we go to the third reading, we will be proofing what they have done, and we will be giving a new definition, just an improvement of what they have done. But in principle, Honorable Speaker, we are in agreement that there is need to come up with a definition of what financial obligation means, so that there is clarity. The other clause, Honorable Speaker, is Clause 3A, where the proposal is to delete the word national, so that instead of having national debt, we replace national debt with public debt. And this is aligned with the Constitution. The Constitution talks about public debt, not national debt. So this is just like cleaning the act, Honorable Speaker. And as a committee, we really have no problem supporting that. So we are saying that as we move to the future, Honorable Speaker, then we will be agreeing with the Treasury so that we replace the word national debt with public debt. Clause 3B, Honorable Speaker, is intended to ensure that the Public Debt Management Office has more role in controlling what happens at the national level in terms of matters public debt and what happens at the county level matters county debt, public debt. What is happening, Honorable Speaker, currently is that the Public Debt Management Office can only now go and monitor or audit county public debts at the invitation of the counties. But the law says their work is actually to oversee in totality the public debt. So what this Clause 3 is attempting to do, Honorable Speaker, is to make sure that then the Public Debt Management Office can audit both at the national level and at the county level matters related to public debt without the word invitation. And we think that's a good amendment, Honorable Speaker. So we are agreeing to that as a committee, and we will be supporting that. Now, Clause 4, Honorable Speaker, is a clause which now, and I want members to listen, Clause 4 is suggesting, currently, this office called the Public Debt Management Office, under Clause 4, is being suggested that this office also takes the advisory role to advise Parliament. Currently, they only advise Treasury. Now, their advisory role is being extended to include Parliament. And if you look at the principle of separation of power, first of all, this office, honorable members, is a department or a directory under Treasury, which means they are answerable to the PS Treasury and CS Treasury. So from that analysis, you can see that it is like Parliament will be being advised by a department in Treasury. And this, on the basis of principle of separation of powers, is not obtainable. So, honorable members, this Clause 4, even though they are proposing that we do that, this is a clause the committee has taken a position, and we are saying there is no way Parliament can be advised by a department in Treasury. On the basis of that, this clause will be proposing for deletion, and it will not be part of the bill. Clause 4B, Honorable Speaker, talks about the other issue I was discussing. It's just a cleaning exercise, replacing national debt with the public debt, because public debt is divided in the Constitution. Now, Clause 6A, Honorable Speaker, this is, to me, this was actually the main reason why this bill was crafted by Treasury. And it is what the majority leader was explaining. And I want to plead with honorable members that we take time to listen to what the committee observed. In this clause, it has two sections. Section 1 of the clause, part 1 of the clause seeks to delete the words "a limit" and replace them with the words "set threshold." But in addition to that, there is an insertion of a proviso at the end of the sentence that reads, and I want our members to listen to this proviso, which reads, provided that if at any time the Cabinet Secretary is unable to maintain the public debt threshold as required under this subsection or the regulations thereunder, the Cabinet Secretary shall submit a written report to Parliament explaining the cause of the breach on the threshold and provide a time-bound remedial plan. Honorable Speaker, as the majority leader said, let me handle the second part because it's easier. What this second part is saying is, honorable members, as Parliament, we have been asked or been coerced to allow our power be exercised by Treasury. What they are saying is, we allow the CS Treasury to breach the law, and then he can come to explain to us. If you look at the Constitution, it is very clear that it is only Parliament that can set limit, debt limit, or the threshold. So on the basis of that, that proviso or part 2 of that clause, Honorable Speaker, as a committee, we have said no to it, and we will not be allowing it. So we only set the threshold, but part 2 will be deleted as we move to the future, Honorable Speaker. Now, let me come to the threshold, Honorable Speaker. And this way I want to spend a bit of time, Honorable Speaker, because it's important. Now, honorable members, when I joined this House in 2013 together with the majority leader and other members like Honorable Boy, the first year we go to this House, that was March. Before the end of that year, the House was presented with a proposal to change the debt ceiling from 1.2 Kenya shillings trillion to 2.4 trillion. Personally, I did oppose that proposal, but at the end of the day, the majority carried their day, and we moved it up to 2.4. Over time, we hit that limit. And then Treasury came back to us again, and instead of now a limit, they proposed to go back to the threshold, the so-called debt anchor. So we went back to a percentage of the GDP. And Honorable Speaker, at that time, the percentage we approved was 50% of GDP. This is the net present value of the public debt to GDP was 50%, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we operated under that up to almost around 2017. And in 2017 again, Treasury came back, Honorable Speaker, and we went back now to our limit as a figure again. Where we said the figure, I think at that point, if I remember well, was about 8.4 trillion. Then over time, the House was requested we push it to 9 trillion, which we did after a serious discussion in this House. And just last year, as we were approaching the election, Honorable Speaker, as we were approving the last budget, the budget we are implementing now, Honorable Speaker, Treasury came back again and said we needed to raise the ceiling to 10 trillion, Honorable Speaker. So what am I saying? I'm saying as a country, we have been able to experience both sides of this threshold, a nominal figure and a percentage. And the truth of the matter is, despite of which one we are using, we always end up being requested to improve it. So what has happened currently, Treasury is now requesting this House to approve a net present value of the public debt to GDP of 55%. Why 55%, honorable members? Honorable members, the World Bank and the IMF, who are like the financial monitors in the world, would normally carry an assessment of the country capacity to get debt We call them public debt carrying capacity of countries. So Kenya, from where we are, after looking at all the factors, we are assessed as our debt carrying capacity is 55% of the GDP, the net present. So, honorable members, what you have been requested is now you move from a nominal figure of 10 trillion and place the country in 55% where it should be as assessed by the international bodies. So that is our debt carrying capacity. Now, the challenge we have, honorable members, by the time we were interacting with the Treasury, our net present value was 60%, which already means we have already breached. We are above the 55. As I'm talking to you now, and you had the chair budget explain, we are at 62.5%. So the question in the committee we have been asking ourselves is, Honorable Speaker, we are asking ourselves, and you are a renowned lawyer in this country, do we legislate when we already know that we have breached this position? And that's why we see, Honorable Speaker, we had said we provide a threshold of 55% plus 5%, so that if it gets to 60%, then it will be now, we'll be saying, let's make the law without breaching the law from the word go. On the basis of that, then what it means is this. Through the fiscal consolidation path, Honorable Speaker, then Treasury will be working towards bringing the percentage to where it should be 55%. But now we have another dilemma now. The figure has moved beyond the 5%, Honorable Speaker, which you are proposing. So that means as we go to the third reading, honorable members, there will be need to look at that plus or minus 5% again and see how the drafting of the law can be done to allow Treasury to operate within the region of breaching, but force them to work towards achieving the 55%. That is the explanation, honorable members. So as we agree to this, honorable members, this is an area we don't want to hear your input so that as you craft the final drafting of the law, then the drafting is correctly done. But, Honorable Speaker, I just want to say this. As a committee, and Honorable Speaker, I must really thank you and the wisdom of the House through creating this Committee of Public Debt and Privatization. This committee, up to now, we have tabled about 3 reports relating to public debt and CFS, Consolidated Fund Services. And honorable members, I really urge you to look at those reports. They are providing very important information. But just among the things you have proposed, honorable members, so that we are able to control public debt in this country, the first thing is annually, honorable members, you do discuss what we call the medium-term public debt strategy. You discuss it annually because it comes together with the budget policy statement. So when you discuss that document and you approve it, honorable members, it means on annual basis you have an opportunity to set the public debt ceiling. So immediately you set the budget deficit, you'll have set the public debt ceiling. So it means on annual basis, honorable members, our committee is proposing that we take this document seriously and make sure that whatever ceilings we agree on are adhered to by Treasury. The second point we have proposed, Honorable Speaker, when we look at the public debt portfolio in this country, what we call the stock, Honorable Speaker, and the payments we are making, Honorable Speaker, we have realized this country has uncommitted loans, loans which we have already signed before, but because we are not drawing, Honorable Speaker, we are paying commissions. You'll be surprised, Honorable Speaker, to realize that by up to March this year, this country had paid about 580 million just for failure of not withdrawing the loan which has already been approved. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, is the issue of the foreign exchange. Because of the way our foreign exchange regime is not stable, Honorable Speaker, we end up spending a lot of money paying for the changes, what we call the volatility of the dollar and the other foreign currency. So this is another area, Honorable Speaker, we want the House to take seriously. Because I could hear the majority saying we need to come up with the strategies of how to monitor this. The other thing, Honorable Members, is we have said it is time this country came up with a sinking fund for paying public debt. So that once we introduce that, we establish that sinking fund, Honorable Speaker, over time, like now we should not be discussing the issue of how do we pay the Eurobond, which we took 2014. If we had a sinking fund, we will be paying that amount on annual basis, and by now we'll just be awaiting to issue the final payment for that Eurobond, and will not be even straining Kenyans. The other thing, Honorable Speaker, we have said as a committee, and it's important, Honorable Members, you note this. We have said the basic principle of borrowing is that the generation which is borrowing should not be in a position to overburden the future generation. We call it, in a technical term, intergenerational equity. So that when we are borrowing today, we must remember our future children and grandchildren will be expected to pay these loans because they are 30, 40 years loans. So there must be a procedure to ensure that we don't overburden our future generations. In that case, Honorable Members, as a House, as we discuss public debt, it's important we take note of some of these important things so that we will be able to help our future generations so that by the time we take the loans, by the time they mature, they will have generated enough income for the country to repay without overburdening the future generations. Last but not least, Honorable Speaker, on this issue of public debt, as a committee, we are saying that application of public debt, any money borrowed from outside Kenya and domestically, so long as it is a loan, it must be applied for intended purposes. Honorable Speaker, we have seen a situation where members are saying these loans are being applied to projects which are not feasible, projects which don't generate income for the country, which are not sending enough returns to the country. At the end of the day, we end up paying for debts using our exchequer, our consolidated fund services, and not with the resources which have been generated by investing in these loans. So, Honorable Speaker, those many remarks, Honorable Members, those are some of the things you have done as a committee, and we'll be urging you when we come to the third reading, so that as we amend this bill, we amend the bill to an extent that we don't lose our independence in terms of determining public debt, and at the same time we don't allow a department in Treasury to start telling us how to relate with public debt, because we have our own parliamentary budget office, which has the capacity to do that with this House. So with those many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second, and I want to thank my members for the many days we sat together to discuss this bill. I want to thank everybody who was involved and our stakeholders. Once more, Honorable Speaker, thank you. I second.
Thank you, Honorable Makali Mulu. I'll now propose the question, which is that the Public Finance Management Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bill number 16 of 2023, be now read the second time. Omboko Milemba.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this chance to make a few comments on this particular bill, which has many items which try to manage our public debt and how we can actually move forward. Honorable Speaker, as I support, I want to indicate that this is a country which is reeling in high borrowing, like it has been indicated, that currently we have an outstanding debt of over 9.63 trillion, and with a debt ceiling of 10 trillion. And of the 10 trillion, about 4.5 trillion is domestic, while 5.09 is foreign. And we already have a budget which has a deficit of 718 billion. And if you look at the fiscal space for borrowing, then it means we have only a fiscal space of about 400. So indeed, it will be very difficult to finance the current budget, 2023-2024, without doing something about our ceiling levels, because our fiscal space is so small. I would wish to indicate that indeed it's good practice as advised by the IMF, that every country must borrow as per its capacity to carry the debt. And therefore, that's why this bill proposes that we move from a figure of 10 trillion, or if we were to increase it to 11 or 12, given the history that this figure was increased beginning 2013 from 1-point-something trillion, and currently it is standing at 10 trillion. I remember for the longest time many Kenyans imagined that Kenya has a lot of money, And with the rampant corruption that was going on within the country, the members of the public would understand that there's too much money in this country that cannot get finished even if there's corruption. But the truth, Honorable Speaker, and to this House and Kenyans is that we were depending on daily basis on borrowing. And each time we depleted our stocks, we went back to Parliament and still got more loan, and that's how we sustained ourselves all the years, especially, remarkably, if you look at the figures as they are, the time between 2013 and 2017 coming 2022, because within that time alone, we were able to more than triple the foreign debt from about 2 trillion to over 10 trillion as it stands today. And therefore, there's need to manage our debts depending on our carrying capacity. And given that we are going the IMF way and World Bank way, the so-called Bretton Woods institutions, then it is important that we regulate our borrowing depending on our carrying capacity, and that's why a threshold of 55% debt anchor is being proposed. And that will be able to make us, in reality, reduce on our borrowing. Currently, what is the percentage of our debt vis-a-vis the GDP? It is much higher, like it has been indicated by the mover and the seconder. We were very lucky to have very strong mover and very strong seconder, two strong economists moving this particular bill. So we are standing at over 60%. It's about 62.5%. But now we want to come down to 55%. So in all this, it's a good, because the holistic agenda of this bill, therefore, is to try and move down the debt and manage it so that we move from where we are to a downward figure. And therefore, I think it is good, but then we have to put several measures in place to make sure that we don't allow our powers to be ceded to the minister. I want to indicate, as proposed by both the mover and the seconder, that it should not be, and the Parliament should not allow its powers of controlling the foreign debt to go to the minister. And I think both the mover and the seconder did not indicate the fact that within this bill, there was an attempt to try and lower the threshold of who was to manage debt to a level of regulation and not act. And that would have been very, very dangerous. I want to believe that in the third reading, we should be able to correct that, both as a committee and the House, that matters relating to foreign debt and borrowing must be exclusively in the hands of the Parliament and not be downgraded to a regulation where the minister can do whatever he wants to do, borrow, get out of the threshold, and still only come to Parliament for borrowing. Because if we did that, then Parliament would have completely abdicated its duty of managing both debt and budget of this particular country. Honorable Speaker, I know of very few countries that have gone the debt anchor way, but as Kenya, we need to be brave enough to actually confront it in that manner, because it is going to make sure that we manage our debt. Finally, as I finish, Honorable Speaker, I want to indicate that the too much appetite we have for borrowing in this particular country needs to be managed. And that's why yesterday we were dealing with the tax laws and ways of raising funds, which will go a long way to try and manage this. But above all is the creation of a sinking fund. If we had a sinking fund during the time when the Eurobond 2014 was actually bought, then by now would have actually sunk enough money within that particular sinking fund to manage and also help in paying the Eurobond. I support fully the fact that we need to go for concessional loans and long-term bonds, long-term tenure bonds that will actually then can be used to pay the short-term debts that we have and which are very expensive and are reeling this country in great trouble. Honorable Speaker, I want to support this bill and urge the House to support it, because we have to cut our clothes depending on our size. This will be a little bit difficult, but that's the way we need to go so as to manage the country. And in so doing, we have to also improve on productivity, because one other thing that really has made our borrowing to be increased is the fact that we don't have foreign exchange, and our balance of payments are very poor. that the days of the coffee and tea where we used to export quite a number of goods outside and therefore would earn foreign exchange are no longer in existence, and we are actually relying on everything to get the foreign exchange. And it's once hit by the fact that, and I like the discussion of yesterday, Honorable Speaker, that we are importing everything, and therefore we need 100% dollar for us to import everything that we want. And therefore, as I saw, some measures being put on importation of steel, importation of things that can be produced within this country, that was a very good measure, because we must start producing, exporting our own goods so that we can get foreign exchange, which in turn will reduce the burden that we have in that particular area. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I want to thank you and support.
Honorable members, I want to direct as follows. I will give John Badi 5 minutes, Oundo 5 minutes, then I'll call the mover to reply.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Hold on, Badi. Let me, maybe on this side, I'll give the chair of finance. The rest, hold your horses. You know, let me tell you why I'm doing this. These are time-bound legislations. You can see the hemorrhage in the House is quite high, and we need to put the question when we have quorum, and these bills must be ascended to on or before Friday next week. Right? Allow me to recognize the following schools before Honorable Badi, and you restrict yourself to maximum 5 minutes. Nandarasi Secondary School, North Kinangop, Nyandarua. St. Catherine Gaturi Girls, Kiharu. Garden Estate Secondary School, Roysambu, Nairobi. On behalf of the House and my own behalf, I welcome the students and their teachers to the House of Parliament. Honorable Badi, 5 minutes. If you can do less, the better.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'll do 5 minutes or less. Mr. Speaker, first of all, I want to agree that we have spoken about this matter for years now, that we need to move away from absolute numbers and anchor our debt to GDP. Why that is necessary is simply because to measure the country's economic growth, it is measured in terms of gross domestic product, in net present value, or at times some people measure it in nominal terms. But Mr. Speaker, for you also to determine our ability to pay or repay our debts, then it should be anchored on economic growth, because it is from what the economic growth that will be able to meet our obligations. Mr. Speaker, and now I want to disclose that when this bill was first introduced on 6th of June by the Leader of Majority, Honorable Kimani Ichung'wah, on 8th made a public pronouncement that the bill has been sneaked into the House at a time when we were very busy with finance bill and the budget estimates. And because the reason why I said so, and today I'm making that disclosure because from the contribution of the majority leader, then I think it would be fair to take back my words, because he has agreed that clause 6 has a problem. And that is the clause that really offended my conscience. Why? Because, Mr. Speaker, from the reading of it, it is clear that we would take away the power of Parliament in setting the debt ceiling or anchoring debt for that matter. And what really made me a bit unhappy was where there was a proposal that the Cabinet Secretary would just make a report to Parliament, not even seeking post facto approval, just making a report. But, Mr. Speaker, even as we move to GDP, we need to be clear as a country on how do we measure the GDP of this country. I think it is controversial, and if we are going to peg our debt to GDP, then we need to have harmony and agreement on the same. Mr. Speaker, I want to conclude by saying I agree with the committee that, and I'm happy that the committee has recommended that we delete clause 4, because really, when you talk about advice, what is the definition of advice? Mr. Speaker, we have been with you in this parliament, especially in the 10th parliament, where advice became such a serious matter of debate. what do you mean by advice and agreement? So we need to be clear, because once you give power to advise, the person given the power may now assume that his opinion or her opinion must be taken as given. And then that would bring controversy. Mr. Speaker, I want to be conscious of time and yield at this stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. My party chair has been very brief, and I would imagine the time he has left is donated to me, but I'll strictly stick to your requirements. Honorable Speaker, it has always been said debt is always cheaper than equity. We have always taught in our investment and appraisal classes that debt is never bad as long as the right leverage has been established. Honorable Speaker, when I perused this particular bill when it was published, like my party chair has said, I was extremely apprehensive. Apprehensive specifically on clause 6(2), where it gave unfettered powers to the cabinet secretary to spend beyond the limit and simply come to report to Parliament. That would have taken away power of Parliament donated by Article and the Constitution of Kenya, Article 203, or the section dealing with public finance. Honorable Speaker, I want to mention two things. It was also has been refreshing to listen to the leader of majority in whose name the act has been published. Honorable Speaker, I remember when I sat in the Committee of Delegated Legislation, the issue of the limit came to us twice. One we approved, the other we were reluctant, and we had to revert what we were. Honorable Speaker, the proposal under clause 6 seems to suggest that we leave away the limit, which in parlance means a nominal value. We go to a threshold. And for purposes of just to understand, threshold means the point of vulnerability, beyond which if you ever borrow beyond that point, it will be a breaking point and it will be an issue to do with the economy. Honorable Speaker, I also want to join my party chair on the issue of measuring GDP and the issue of determining the NPV. NPV means, Honorable Speaker, net present value. And my question that is going to disturb many people in this country, what is the discount rate are we going to use to determine the net present value at the time of setting the threshold? Secondly, how many years are we going to discount so that we arrive at the net present value? Those are the issues I hope when the Cabinet Secretary is making a report to Parliament will strictly disclose all those material facts. Honorable Speaker, of course the issue, how do we measure the GDP? In a third world country like Kenya, do we have adequate data to capture all the happenings in the economy? Where we have so many non-motorized supplies, where we have so many self-supplies that not go through the money market or is not monitorized. Obviously, Honorable Speaker, that's where the danger looms. And it looms large, and it's going to be a disaster, a scandal in the next few years. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, allow me to mention the issue of intergenerational burden. Honorable Speaker, when we are doing cost-benefit analysis, we always talk about willingness to pay and willingness to accept. Intergenerational burden must be spread between the generation. Many of the time when we borrow to invest in capital projects or public projects, they have a longer payback period beyond any single generation. And that's why the question that we must burden the current generation to pay all the debt incurred currently to build a facility or a public good going to last over 100 years has been a debate that we need to settle at one time or another. Honorable Speaker, as I conclude, the issue of public debt has been a debate, has been public debate, has been a political debate. We hope at one time or another we'll make it devoid of politics so that we focus on the future development of this country, because there's no single time we'll have the resources to develop, we'll have to borrow. On that matter, I support Honorable Speaker.
Kimani, I'll be happy if you take 3 minutes.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I will actually take much less than that.
Very good.
Honorable Speaker, I beg to support this particular bill of changing our debt to being nominal terms, to making it a percentage of GDP in present value terms. And I'd like to add probably a new reasoning to it. These nominal terms, without necessarily being privileged to what is the rate of Kenya shillings versus the dollar, what is 10 trillion shillings, and what is this ceiling about, Honorable Speaker. Most importantly, this puts very good pressure on the executive